So, everybody who celebrates Christmas absolutely adores it because Christmas is a time for giving and getting. And this year, Whovians are getting a new episode of Doctor Who, which is quite a surprise after a whole year without it. And I'd like to thank Stephen Moffat for giving us that episode because, well, I suppose that's kind of redundant because he gave us the year without Doctor Who anyway, but thank you for bringing it back. So, before I go and eat a mince pie, I think it's time for us to do a Doctor Who Christmas special ranking. So, in 10th place is A Christmas Carol. Now, this episode is a complicated episode because it's based off A Christmas Carol, obviously, as seen in the title, with Ebenezer Scrooge replaced with Kazran Sardik, and the Doctor basically tries to make him nice. Now, I get confused here because I'm not quite sure what I don't like about this episode. I just cringe whenever I watch it. I mean, there's no big immediate threat except from Amy and Rory on their honeymoon crashing to Earth, so I suppose it's just a matter of being too fairy tale-ish for me. I like Doctor Who episodes that are quite dark, but I don't mind quite fun, light-hearted episodes, but this just took it a bit too far, and that's why I ranked this episode last place in my Christmas special countdown. Next up, I've decided to put The Christmas Invasion in as number 9. Now, there's a fine line between A Christmas Carol and The Christmas Invasion. Now, I like The Christmas Invasion. It introduces the Sycorax, which I'm really sad got no more televised stories because it would have been epic. But they were in Harvest of the Sycorax for Big Finish, so I'll give them that. But this episode barely even had the Doctor in it. It was more of a Rose and her family, including Mickey and her mum, looking after the Doctor because he's in a coma after his regeneration. Now, why was he in the coma after his regeneration? He's never done that before, except for in Castrovalva, but that was for a reason. The Fifth Doctor went in the Zero Room. Now, this episode is Doctor Light, as I said, and I think it's just that I don't like Doctor Light episodes. I like the Doctor to be in an episode because I suppose he's the main character. And that's probably why I rate this 9th instead of anywhere higher. Now, on to my next Christmas special. So, in 8th place is The Runaway Bride. Now, The Runaway Bride had this much potential, but the thing that lets it down is that the difference between Stephen Moffat Christmas specials and Russell T Davies Christmas specials is that Stephen Moffat's are more Christmassy, and that's what I like, that's what makes it a Christmas special, whereas Russell T Davies are just set on Christmas Day with very few Christmas references, which is what really lets its story down. But on the good, it had the Ragnos in it, which were absolutely brilliant. It had Donna Noble in it, which, as I have said before, is my favourite ever companion. And it was just a great story. It had the 10th Doctor after Rose, so that kind of, I wasn't sure about that because I wasn't sure on Rose, but altogether this was a pretty decent story. Next up, in the brilliant 7th place, is The Time of the Doctor. Now, I particularly enjoyed this episode. We get to see Matt Smith age protecting Trenzalore from these monsters that want to see this message that is being emitted from Trenzalore. Now, these monsters are the Daleks, the Cybermen, Sontarans, Weeping Angels, you name it. They're all there coming to try and find this message, and the Doctor has to try and protect it. Now, this was altogether a great story. The one thing that let this down is that it was a bit all over the place, really, all these monsters. This could have been a more well-structured story, but I don't think it was structured very well. Yes, it saw the return of the Silent, brilliant villains, but again, the structure, that's all that lets it down. But that aside, it was a pretty decent, well, how do I say it, fan-orientated story. Now, next up, in 6th place, we have The Doctor, the Widow and the Wardrobe. Now, this is the most underrated episode of the Christmas specials, which I think is totally uncalled for because this is quite a magical, light-hearted episode, and it doesn't go over the top like A Christmas Carol did. It does it just right, which is pretty nice to have. But one sad thing is it's set in the war, so there's these kids and their mum Marge and the Doctor, who's the sort of like, I don't know what they call it, the caretaker in the house, and he's brought them this present to a magical world, but these kids, they've got one thing missing, and that's their father, which kind of makes it sad. But again, it adds to the Christmas effect of realising what you have. As I said, it's about giving and getting, and the giving part, it's quite nice, but the getting all year round is what you have. And this episode really plays on that, so I think bravo to this episode. For you guys who don't like it, I do truly hope you give it another watch this Christmas, because it is truly a Christmas gem. In 5th place is The End of Time. Now, a lot of you will say this is 2 parts and only one of them is a Christmas special, but they both are. They both have Christmas aspects in them. Now, a lot of people watch this episode also and think, wow, this is amazing, it's an absolutely brilliant episode. And yes, I do agree, it is brilliant. But as well as it could have been, it wasn't really Christmassy enough for me to be a Christmas special. This could have been done in the middle of summer, just take out the snow, and I would have still enjoyed it as much, which is kind of a bummer, really, because that is, well, what we're expecting, and we didn't actually get that until Stephen Moffat's era, as I already said. But all that aside, this is a great story. It's the end of my favourite Doctor, David Tennant, and as much as I didn't want him to go, it was time. And that's why this episode is 5th, because as well as it not having Christmas aspects, it makes up for that in the amazing story quality and effects. Next up, in 4th place, is Voyage of the Damned. Now, this is easily the most Christmassy of the Christmas specials of the Russell T Davies era, and that's not just the only thing I like. I also like it when they do, in Doctor Who, the robots run amok thing, as seen in episodes such as the Robots of Death, which is quite a nice addition to a Christmas episode, and I don't think we see it again, and it's absolute genius, the halo coming off the head and whoosh, chop off your head. The angels, again, were quite a nice design for the robots, making them look more Christmassy, adding to the Christmassy effect. Now, the story, it featured Kylie Minogue in it as Astrid Peth, which was quite a nice addition to the cast. And I also liked David Tennant. He was on top form in this episode, especially with his "I'm the Doctor, I'm a Time Lord from the planet Gallifrey" and the Constellation of Stavros speech. That was quite nice. And basically everything here felt in place, and I don't think it could have been done any other way than in this beautiful episode. So, no, I've not rated other episodes, but if I could rate, I would definitely rate this a 9 out of 10, which obviously tells you that the next up Christmas specials are just so darn good. So, next up is quite a dark episode, The Snowmen, in 3rd place. Now, I quite enjoy this episode because I like seeing Matt Smith play a dark character because it's not in his nature. He usually plays quite a light-hearted Doctor, quite bouncy and quirky, and that's what I love about his Doctor. But here, we get to see another side to him when he's lost Amy and Rory, and he's in kind of this gang in Victorian London with Jenny, Vastra and Strax, who all owe him a favour due to previous events. Now, this episode, again, I quite liked it because it was dark, but I also quite like the snowman idea of living snow, and it's because of, well, the imagination, and we get to see that Ice Mistress was quite a nice idea due to what the kids and Clara were thinking. And, yeah, and Dr. Simeon, oh god, he was so great. He's like the best Christmas villain there has been. And altogether, this was a really good Christmas special, and this deserves, like, top marks. This is just brilliant. Now, 1st and 2nd place on my list keep swapping. They're just both really, really good. And I've finally decided in 2nd place is Last Christmas. Now, a lot of people before this episode aired were like, oh, Santa's going to be in an episode. It's a bit over the top fairy tale, even worse than A Christmas Carol. But it wasn't. It was explained perfectly in the form of the dream crabs, and I can't remember the name very well. I think it's the Cantrafari, but I'll have to check that up. Now, this episode wasn't quite as light-hearted as previous specials, but it wasn't quite dark as The Snowmen, and I quite like this just right, sort of, like food, it's cooked just right. It wasn't too much of either side, and that's what I liked about it. It also reflected the Series 8 kind of style and theme, and it brought the Doctor and Clara back together after spending a while apart, or that's what they think, because it's all a dream, as we find out in the end. And it felt a bit weird at the end because Clara was supposed to leave, but then she suddenly decided to come back. So that was quite a weird addition that kind of shut the episode a bit, but I think due to its amazing story and amazing ideas for the Cantrefari, which were possibly the best Christmas special villains yet, along with Dr. Simeon, I think this episode totally deserves second place because of just how good everything is, and everything's on top form, including the acting, the effects, just everything is, and the two little elves are so funny. In first place is The Great Husbands of River Song. It's quite a genius episode, I think. Well, I know it is because of, well, how amazing the comedy was and how Christmassy it felt. And it was just altogether amazing. Seeing River Song when she's not with the Doctor was brilliant. I know we saw it in the Diary of River Song box set, but we get to see it on TV here because she doesn't know about the Doctor's current face, and we get to see him watching over her. Now, I felt a bit bad for River Song actually, because perhaps she acts different towards the Doctor than she does for other people, and maybe doesn't want the Doctor to see that. But actually, it makes it quite heartwarming episode, and it's quite funny. And King Hydroflax was a great addition. He was on top for me. He was brilliant. He carried the episode along, but also so did River Song and Nardole, the two pair, and River Song's assistant. I keep forgetting his name, but I'll remember it one day. And altogether, this is easily the best episode, and no Christmas episode can beat that. Let's see if the return of Dr. Mysterio can get any better than this. I don't think it can, but there's always room for improvement. If you enjoyed the video, let us know at Time of the Whovians United by liking or commenting, and maybe even subscribing if you haven't already, and sharing the Christmas spirit with us. Now, I hope you all have a Merry Christmas, and I will see you in the new year.